It's a little past 5:45 in the evening. The sun is bright and clear today. I learned today what an measuring instrument is called when I was writing about those guys from Scotland. James Watt was a engineer who used to make these instruments that could measure angles. So the sun right now is at an angle, I mean, we're just guessing, his instrument would have told us precisely, is at an angle of I don't know, about 40 degrees from the horizontal, maybe? Close? Yeah, probably. That's the horizontal, yeah. So 10, 20, 30, and 40. That sounds about right. You know, we could start off by talking about illusions, like the sun is an illusion, or its movement is an illusion, or how certain things are illusions, you know. But clearly, I mean, this is not an illusion, that there seems to be eyeglasses, right? I mean, you see the empty space, and you see the sun, right? So that is not an illusion. What is an illusion is this appearance of a face here. The reason that's an illusion is because the leaves are arranged. It doesn't, when I look at it, when I look at that particular spot, the leaves are arranged in a layered manner. So Siri collapses the layers unless you look very carefully. But my eyes don't collapse the layers, so I remain in 3 dimensions, whereas the video allows for better viewing from a 2-dimensional perspective. So it collapses the dimension, it reduces the dimension by 1, and when that happens, I see some really interesting sort of things in nature. Collapsing it into lesser dimensions from 3 to 2 allows for some interesting configurations to emerge that are not obvious when you look at them with just eyes that are 3-dimensional. So those are 2 illusions, the movement of the sun and then the illusion of the camera, I guess you could call it. It's not the sun, I mean, this doesn't need to be said, but I'll say it anyway. The sun is not moving, it's the earth that's moving. I mean, every middle schooler knows that, or even, in primary school you learn that it's not the sun that is moving, it's the earth that moves, and the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And someone who is very careful with language will point that out and say it's not the sun rising, it's the earth's rotation. But our very language says those things. It reinforces the illusion. So language can sometimes create illusions that go into our subconscious and they stay there. There are many such examples in the English language. I don't have them handy in front of me. What I do have in my hands, though, is an apple. I brought it here to feed the turtles and the koi fish. They seem to love the sugar in the apples. I also brought it here to sort of put myself in a more Newtonian state of mind, to imagine the world the way Newton might have. And the legend has it that the apple fell on his head. It's a kid story, obviously. You tell that to kids. Presumably, when, as Matthew says, they run around with naked feet on the 4th of July to see the fireworks. To your great amusement, I didn't grow up understanding what an apple meant. Even though the shape is sort of obvious, isn't it? Am I being too analytic here? but that's what I'm I laugh because these are things that I simply didn't grow up that way, and nobody ever explained them to me. So to me, an Apple computer is just an Apple computer. Newton's laws of motion are nothing more than physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction doesn't mean anything more to me other than exactly what it says. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That's all it meant to me. I never, and I at least I don't think I was a dumb child, but I simply didn't think in similes, metaphors, allegories. My mind simply didn't work that way. I couldn't, how shall I say it? I said what I meant to my teachers, to my parents, to my friends, to everyone. I said exactly what I meant. I didn't talk about someone and actually was talking about someone else. That simply wasn't me, I stop when I start noticing my accent take on tones um, that sound like ex-presidents and so on, and I just, I'd rather speak with my own voice. The, this is simply to exercise my vocal cords. So if I start noticing a visible accent, I'm simply going to stop. I'm not going to actually continue talking. I'll just stop mid-sentence. Anyway, the suggestion, the bells are ringing. It must be 6 or close to. Oh no, this is the first bell coming from the left. This is 5:55. 5 minutes from now, other bells will ring to signal 6 o'clock. Or I could be wrong. This could be 6 o'clock. Anyway, the topic, that was suggested by YouTube was talking about light and time. And as I was walking here, the idea started forming of what I could say. I started noticing things. If I simply sit here and allow the sun to set, then the light on this bench will change. The shadow will change. It'll become dark. The angles of light will change. The shadow will lengthen, I suppose. And when I look around, light will change the coloring on everything. Sunsets are considered very beautiful. Most people on a beach are captivated by sunset. Colors are extraordinary many times. And there's just something extraordinarily beautiful about it. You can't help it, but people gather and they just look at the setting sun. I wanted to ponder the idea that my internal landscape, my internal mind, and when I say my internal mind, I'm not just referring to my conscious mind. I'm also referring to my subconscious and my unconscious minds. We wake up in the morning and we say we are clearing the cobwebs from our minds, right? That's why we try to have coffee. That's an interesting cobweb, isn't it? Every cobweb is a trap. Created by spiders. But that's what we say, we say, I have to clear the cobwebs from my mind so I can function, so I can work. I need my coffee this morning. My mind's, it feels like it's got cobwebs. It's not functioning. Don't we say that? At least I used to say that. And then as the day proceeds and the sun emerges and the scenery lightens, the fog lifts, our minds become sharper, they become more alert, we become more focused, more energized, more thoughtful. And so on. So there seems to be a connection between light, shadow, and time, and its connection to our internal landscape. Now, this is not a scientific discussion. It's not even a metaphysical discussion. It's simply an observation that I have made based on my life and based on the way during these moments of silence, my mind is very quiet. My mind doesn't have thoughts. I'm fortunate that way. Some people's minds can be very noisy. Thoughts are constantly running. I am allowed to stay silent, and in my silence, I continue to maintain an observational vantage point. As you can see, it's a little noisy from my coughs. People are coming and going, and I can't really describe them to you because I cannot see these people. They're just coming and going, and what they're doing, why they are here in me or logged into me, or why my accent changes, I have truly no idea. I simply don't know the answer. I sometimes don't publish videos because of that reason. I take videos every day, but I don't publish them because I start sounding like, ex-presidents or people, very recognizable personalities. And I have no idea what they've done to my mind, and I have no idea why that happens. I assume it's some sort of a nodal structure where there are critical nodes, and I am somehow one of the critical nodes. Some people have told me I sit on top of all the nodes, and my role is to monitor all the traffic. And that's why I have a lot of input and output traffic. The problem is that I can't see any of these people, so I can't really tell you or report to you what is going on. There are some people who are logged into me and they can see what's happening. There are other people who can see a limited amount of things of what is happening, and there are yet more people who can see very, very tiny amounts of what is happening. So there are at least 3 levels of hierarchy, at least. And there may be more than that. There may be more levels of hierarchy that people are unaware of. So I'm trying to actively modulate my voice and speak softly. And some of you have said you like my voice. Others have said, it's not, it doesn't have the energy, you need to speak a little more, how should I say it, a little more aggressively, or a little more, with a little more personality. And these are artifacts. These accents for me are simply artifacts of history, for my history, my personal history. Every day for me is like a little snippet, of my life. And I record these videos only to exercise my vocal cords. I keep saying that, but that's why I record these videos. If you, the listener, go throughout your day without actually speaking to anyone, then you would do probably something similar just to keep your voice active. That's all these are. These are musings, these are meditations, and these are ways to keep my vocal cord and my mind active. Because if your mind is silent and you're silent, both, when the mouth is silent and the mind is silent, when both are silent, then the observer fades into the background. And when the observer fades into the background and becomes the background, it's very difficult to maintain a sense of identity. It's very difficult to maintain it's very difficult to maintain any sort of coherence to the narrative that is our daily life. Now the sun has set a little more, the light has changed, and the question that is worth pondering is, has my internal landscape changed? We don't self-examine, I think, our minds enough. We simply we simply accept it as who we are, not as a part of who we are. The distinction between who we are and a part of who we are is very significant, isn't it? If you accept everything that the mind is suggesting and give it the identity of your own self, and you say, this is me, I'm thinking this, or this is how I think, then suddenly the mind and you are identical. The mind is not part of you, the mind is you. And there's a very big difference in that. The landscape becomes you. And by that I mean the internal landscape, the mental landscape. Last few days I haven't been able to relax into letting the environment do the talking. It's just sad. It is what it is, which is why I'm not posting any more videos. I prefer to let the environment do the talking, right? That's my style. I don't actually talk. I relax. I meld into the environment and I let the environment talk. That's the other part of why you shouldn't trust me or trust Sentient Musings or trust anything you read unless it appeals to you, to your sense of logic, to your sense of reason, and you examine everything I say very carefully. Without doing that, you should not trust a single thing I say. Because I don't know who's inside me and whether those thoughts are theirs or whether they are mine. And because I don't know that, I don't wish for you to have wrong information. My wish for you is that you are able to think and reason and examine carefully and logically whether anything you hear, including what I say, makes sense to you. I was taught a long time ago to trust no one. I'm not sure which agency or which set of people taught me that, but the dictum is very simple. Trust no one, unless you know their true intentions. Politicians, they sound like game show hosts. You know, um, that's actually a direct quote from a Sting song. You know, when I lose my faith in you, I think that's the song. And if I ever lose my faith in you, and one of the lines he says in there is, you know, politicians sound like game show hosts to me. And this song was way prior to any administration. This song is quite old, actually. Sting was quite young in the video when the song was released. So it's not a reference to any existing politician, is my guess. And it's probably not even a reference to a US politician. So it's a bit ironical that we ended up with a game show host as president. See what I mean? I have some really interesting people who log into me who cannot be allowed to make such statements, I suppose, or who cannot be seen making such statements. Some of you can see who's speaking when I put these videos up, right? Some of you actually can see who's speaking. It's not me. So if I make that statement and it's offensive to someone else, and you know, someone else made it, you know, it's not you know, for these people it's it's a problem. So they then eject themselves, like, you know, Maverick and Goose eject themselves from a burning plane or something. That's how these people are. You know, I don't know who they are, I can't see them, and when I make certain statements, they eject themselves. It's like an old plane, you know, like a World War II plane or something. There's an airport nearby that flies these old antique planes. Some of them are really interesting to see. I mean, they're very antique. What I've discussed today is simply this: it's worth your time to examine your mind and use the landscape of light and shadow. There's no light anymore on this bench. Use the landscape of light and shadow as the earth revolves, as the earth turns, and the sun rises and then sets, to use that as a way to examine how your mind changes or doesn't change during the day. Are you the same person at the end of the day that you were when you woke up? It's worth asking that question, isn't it? Otherwise, why bother living? A self-examined life is a life lived well. I think somebody said that, I forget who. But a person must examine themselves. They must try to answer that question. The way I was taught was that the mind has several, the way I was taught was that the mind has several layers within it, and there are two ways of considering what a mind is. You know, you can look at it as a castle with multiple rooms, and each room could be holding your memories. It's called a memory palace. You can build that in your own mind. Just Google what a memory palace is in mnemonics or Buddhism or something. I forget where I learned the idea of a memory palace. But every room can hold a memory. So if your palace has 100 rooms and you're 100 years old, each room holds your memories from the time you have your first memory. So when was your first memory? 2 years old probably? So starting from your first memory at 2, that's room 1. And then you start building room 2, room 3, room 4, room 5, until you get to room 100, which is when you're 102 years old. And each room has music, fragrance, different things that you can use. Certain rooms you may not want to visit if you're a veteran. Other rooms you visit more frequently. But each room has its own particular, coloring on the wall. It has its own particular fragrance, particular set of furniture, things that you like doing in there. And all of those can be attached to your memories from that particular year. So if you want to look back at what was I like when I was 18, you just have to go to room 20. Wait, no, that's not quite right. You have to go to room 16. I'm sorry. Never mind. You would go to room 16. Not room 20. Anyway, but that would get you to room 8. That would get you to year 18, right? And what was I doing when I was in room 16? And then you sort of attach your memories and to different parts of the room, and you visit it every now and then you enhance it. The more you can remember, maybe from picture books, maybe from something else, maybe from old pictures, old videos, old whatever, you remember those things and you store them in the room. And that's it. And then you leave. That's a way to preserve memory. what I learned was not the memory palace. That's a useful invention. What I learned was that the mind has several layers. Like, for example, there are moods, there are emotions, there are feelings. Now, those are all intangible, right? Certain songs can evoke certain feelings within us. Operas can bring tears, comedy can bring laughter. Feelings are more ephemeral in the sense that they come and go very quickly. Moods are a little bit more like the weather. They tend to stay a little bit. I think that's almost 6:30 now. Emotions are simply emotions. Emotions are the algorithms of our feelings and our moods. They are the fragrance, if you will, of the room. When you move past the intangibles, you start encountering other things like logic, reason, rationality. The ability to learn, the ability to adapt the mind to hardship, to pleasure, to pain, to guilt, and so on. And there is in every person conscience. Sometimes conscience is the innermost room in a person. For some people, conscience is no longer a factor. For others, it's very strong. For yet others, it's somewhere in between. Conscience is the reason we visit, confession, if you're a Catholic. Conscience is the reason why we feel guilty if we have done something wrong. Conscience is also the reason why we feel good if we help someone. When I feed this apple to the turtles, I can't quite explain it, but something in me feels really good. Like I'm feeding a fellow, not a human being, but a fellow sentient being that's hungry. It's my good deed for the day, as they say. It's really interesting. These turtles were sitting out there. They were sunning themselves earlier today. I'd come in for lunch to give them lunch, and all of them, or majority of them, are just sunning themselves over there. Most of them were looking outwards, not into the pool. They were looking outwards. And yet, when I started dropping the apple pieces into the pool, somehow, without even communicating, without making any noise, without making any sound, the turtles who were facing outwards and far away, I mean, they were like out here, way in the distance, whereas the food I was dropping was like right here. Those turtles over there somehow got the message that there is food available, and they started dropping into the water. Isn't that amazing? How did they communicate? How did they know? I was watching them carefully. I wasn't really doing an experiment, but I was sort of surprised by how they knew that there was food in the water. Without being in the water, while looking outwards, away from the water, they somehow knew, and they turned around and they jumped into the water and swam towards me. I'm pretty sure there's more about nature that we don't understand than we truly care to admit. We don't understand the connections between sentient beings. We don't understand how connected everything is. We don't even understand why you or I feel good when we feed some other creature. Why do we feel good? And yet there is so much starvation in the world. Isn't that interesting? Who's responsible for that? I don't mean just the starvation by when we cut off US aid, although that's, certainly people died because of that. I don't know how many thousands or tens of thousands died because of that. But people certainly died. Now, that is an example, right? Let's just take that for a second. There's starvation in America too, but let's take that as an example. The US aid cutoffs, right? America had a charitable policy towards certain nations that were covered through an agency called USAID. America decided to cut it off and said they would focus American dollars on Americans. Sounded reasonable at that time to me, to be honest with you. Every country should first look after itself. I was looking at that time at staggering homelessness and poverty on the streets of San Diego. I was living downtown at that time. And it was, it was really, it was really bad. People were living in tents, and it was quite horrific. to see an American city in that condition. So when I heard about USAID cutoffs, I figured this was a case of, America looking after itself. And that didn't seem unreasonable to me. Every country should look after its own self first and foremost before it decides to help another country. That's, however, not what happened. And here's the really interesting thing. I mean, if America has an obligation in terms of aid, let's say we have committed as a person, let's say I've committed to providing a charity with $10 a month, right? The charity at some point begins, if I am a regular enough donor, they start hoping that I will continue my monthly contributions, that I'm wealthy enough to contribute my monthly contributions. And they start planning around that. They start making, they start buying food, and they start putting out orders, and et cetera, et cetera. You can imagine how a charity works. So they start counting on the monthly donations. So we cut that off, just, completely cut it off. What we did not do, and what we should have done as a country, not as individuals, but as countries, as a country, we should have at the very least said, all right, this is going to impact some people. If money doesn't come in from somewhere else, there are plenty of wealthy people in the world. If money doesn't come in from somewhere else, a lot of people are going to die. So the people who are cutting off USAID, they're the people who should have made the call to their wealthy friends, and they should have asked for donations to substitute the donations that America was cutting off. Shouldn't we have done that? I think we should have done that. But nobody did. We simply cut off USAID. And people died. Fortunately or unfortunately, such things are not prosecutable, because a country is fully in their legal rights to cut off aid. It's our money, we are cutting it off. People die, then they die, right? That's sort of the argument. That's not our concern. It's not legally prosecutable. We could have made calls to wealthy donors. We could have said, listen, here's a worthy project. Could you please support them? You have billions of dollars. You have, whatever. And you could have, you could have made those calls, and those people would have been happy to contribute, I'm sure. But we didn't do that. That's the thing. We didn't do that. We simply cut off the aid. And what I was hoping for, that the aid that we cut off from extremely poor people would go into rebuilding America and taking Americans out of tents and into homes. That never happened. All we did was clean up our cities by putting homeless people elsewhere. That's all we did. Homes were never built using that money that we saved from USAID. What we did instead was we passed a big, beautiful bill that gave tax cuts to really wealthy people So directly, we stole money that we were giving as aid. We took that money and we gave it to wealthy people. Isn't that true? Okay, stole is the right word. Maybe we didn't steal our money. It was our money, but we then gave it to wealthy Americans. We didn't give it to poor Americans. We gave it to wealthy Americans. So we took from the poor and we gave it to the wealthy. I think that's a true statement. There is, at least I can't find a flaw in that statement. American or not, we took from poor people and we gave it to wealthy people. It was a transfer of money upwards from the bottom to the top. Isn't that true? And once again, as I stated at the beginning of the video, I don't know the people who populate me. So every listener, and I don't think there are many listeners because YouTube has only 2 or 3 views per video. Every listener should examine my statements under a microscope of their own minds, and they should really consider whether my statements are true or false. They should really ask themselves, do they stand up to logic? Do they stand up to reason? Are they rational? Do I sound like I'm a rational person? Although my rationality is not in question here, what is in question is the outcomes of what we did. And when I say we, I speak of we as America. What America did to poor people. I don't even know the countries very well. Nicholas Kristof in the New York Times does. I haven't gone like he has to Africa many times. I don't know. I can't even name all the countries on the continent, to be honest with you. I mean, there are so many, from Sierra Leone to Cameroon to Central African Republic to Congo and Rwanda and Nigeria, Kenya. There's an Tanzania. There is like a lot of different countries in Africa. It's a massive continent. So I don't know the details of exactly who was impacted, where they were impacted, but I do know that people were impacted, right? I know that. And I know that if we were going to make a decision like that, we should have substituted our cutting off of the money flow for charity. We should have substituted that. We should have asked other wealthy people to pick up the slack. We didn't do that. Anyway, I at least speak my conscience. I try to awaken your conscience. That's all I can do in videos. Elsewhere, I've proven to you that we are in a system, mathematically proven to you that we are in timelines, that global timelines exist. And if timelines are such that it causes enormous suffering, it causes death, It causes poverty or povertyfication, where money moves from the poor people to the rich people. If those are the sort of timelines, if money moves from America to other parts of the world, if manufacturing, if America is reliant on other countries for manufacturing and we have essentially outsourced our national security, if those are the sort of timelines that exist, and I've proven that timelines exist, events are not disparate and random events, mathematically proven that in one of the posts. Then the question we should ask is, are these timelines worthy of our conscience? Not whether they're worth changing, because I don't have the power to change timelines. Neither do you. We're just cogs in the machine. But it's worthy asking this question: are these timelines good for my conscience? That soft inner voice in the innermost part of your mind, the voice of conscience, that is what I'm trying to awaken. Because at the end of life, what stays with us, what we realize at the end of our lives, and I've had the opportunity to meet some really old people and I've seen them die. At the end of our life, many people confront their life. Many people confront their conscience. Everything gets stripped away. Their ego gets stripped away. Their logic gets stripped away. Their reason, everything that they have built around themselves as defenses, all of that gets stripped away. And what's left is conscience. And you relive your life. You see your life almost as a movie. And then the conscience starts to really do a number on you. I met those old people at the VA. I volunteered at the VA. And so I speak to a lot of veterans, people who haven't had a chance to confess, people who haven't had a chance to, bring out their innermost demons, if they have them. Don't wait till the end of life. It'll be a terrible death if you wait till then. Anyway, this is getting, the bench has gotten dark. Sun's still somewhere out there. I didn't mean it for it to get that dark, but this is something I care about. I hope your conscience awakens. I hope if you're listening to this that you feel that America's conscience needs to awaken. That we need to be a country of people with consciences. Don't you agree? Isn't conscience important? Don't we need to have our conscience? What country would you rather live in? A country filled with people who care and who have conscience for the human beings and animals around them? Or you want to live in a country that's filled with callous, uncaring people that don't speak to each other and don't give a damn what happens to you? What kind of a country do you want to live in? I know where I want to live. Okay, it's almost 1 hour and 6 minutes. It's another beautiful Sunday evening. San Diego. It's probably around 6:50 or getting close to 7 o'clock. July 5th. I'm gonna leave you with just the usual observations, right? I want to point out to you once again that every moment, every ripple, every swaying of these branches and these leaves, every moment, every second is unique. It's really a beautiful world. Whoever created this gave us an enormous gift. And they gave us unique and individual moments. Each one is unique. It cannot be repeated. These ripples will never sway this way again. And when I say that, I mean they will never sway exactly this way again. They will sway, I'm sure. But they will never ripple this way again. No, Matt, I still haven't watched that movie, all right? I have not watched Mr. Ripley because I don't think you're a bad guy. Okay, how's that? I don't think you're a bad guy, you know? Yeah, you've done okay, listen to me carefully. Jason Bourne is not a bad guy. David Webb, though. I'll leave you. I'll leave you. How's this for you, Matt? This one is for David. All right, it's for David Webb. Wherever you are, brother. Take care. Have a great night. Take care.